I'm so excited to have with me today Alicia from Medidata. Alicia, so thank you so much for being with us today. And if you give an introduction to yourself to our wonderful audience here today.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm really honored to be here today. My name is Alicia Staley. I'm the VP of Patient Engagement at Medidata. And by way of very brief introduction, I am also a 3-time cancer survivor. So I find these conversations about, what the state of health tech looks like today to be professionally and personally very interesting. So it's wonderful to be here today. So thanks.
Yeah, and thank you. And Alicia was actually on one of our past Women's Health Tech Wednesday episode where she dove more into her background and in personal story a little bit more. So highly recommend checking that on our YouTube channel. But in terms of for today, can you provide an overview of the current landscape of digital health collaborations between startups and enterprise companies, highlighting any major trends and recent developments that you've seen?
Yeah, I think just looking back, if we start, everyone seems to do these analysis and trend reviews by starting with the ultimate change that we had with the pandemic. So I think what you're seeing right now is we're sort of coming down off that incredible, hyper speed world that we were living in for a few years, addressing some of the key issues coming out of the pandemic. What I'm seeing really is the venture cap dollars and in the investments in health tech startup in particular seems to be slowing down a little bit. But I do believe that's also really good news for the industry, because I think what we're going to start seeing is a real focus on more collaborative efforts in the industry. So when there's a shrinking pool of investment dollars, we've got to get really strategic at how we're spending our time, our money, our resources to really make a quick impact, a quick hit, if you will. And what we're seeing is, we're starting to see startup organizations really look to solve what I'm calling mission critical issues that companies are facing. And we're seeing this sort of shift to focus more on the idea of return on investment or proving value much quicker in this cycle. So we don't see the longer runways that I think startup companies were sort of used to, particularly pre-pandemic and during the pandemic. What we're starting to see is that those long runways are starting to get much shorter. And what we really need to do is focus on providing value right up front. So what can these collaborations do to make an impact right away? And what we're seeing is the companies and the startups that are successful right now are building relationships around existing technologies and actually making them better, making them more efficient, making them more effective, quicker out of the gate. So I don't think we're facing a true technology challenge right now in the industry. I think we're looking to find better ways to repurpose and leverage the technology that's already out there in new ways. So this is, I feel like an exciting time.
Yeah, and it's so nice to get your insights on that. And in terms of talking about, increasing more of that value-based care, value-based solutions, how can we address, the historical disparities in access, especially to clinical research, and ensure that traditionally, marginalized communities are included in development and testing of these new digital health solutions or, current solutions that exist?
That's a great question. And I think that goes back to that idea of how can we solve these mission critical issues? So diversity in clinical trials, recruitment and retention when it comes to clinical trials is a key issue facing the industry across the board. So when you're talking about clinical research in particular, we can't get too far into a value proposition without talking about some of these historical issues that we've had with finding patients from a variety of different backgrounds and a variety of different communities to participate. And what we're seeing now is what I'm very excited to call empathetic technology, right? So we've got these technical solutions, but we're learning is we have to wrap the technology and empathy in a new way. So we've got ways to find patients through data and very critical analysis of data sets, data pools, combing through EHR records. But that's data. It's helping us find these patients. But what we need to do now is actually leverage that technology and those insights to build relationships. And I think this is the hardest part that some folks are really struggling with is we're really good with the data. We're really good with the technology. And now we've got to take it one step further and begin to build relationships and touch points where patients and community members feel seen, they feel heard. And we've got to find ways to use technology in a way that makes sense for everyone. We have to capitalize on what we're seeing in what I'm calling consumer retail tech, which is like your Fitbits and your wearables and your trackers. Everybody's got an Oura ring now. Everybody's got a watch, an Apple Watch, Fitbit tracker. They're using their phone to track their steps. Like people are just getting more accustomed to having data available to them about their state of wellness or their state of health. We've got to capitalize on that and actually bring it into the clinical research ecosystem and make sure that we're building more to sort of humanize healthcare, humanize the tech, and do it in a way that's not going to scare people. We have to do it in a respectful way. And the companies that I'm seeing really sort of stand out right now are the companies that deliver technical solutions, but also deliver services wrapped in those solutions that help people understand the patients that they need to serve and they need to reach.
Yeah, and I would love for you to expand just a little bit more in terms of, what ways can technology be harnessed to expand access to digital health solutions, both in terms of that patient care aspect and as well as that clinical research participation, especially for these underserved communities that we, desperately want to reach out to.
Yeah. So a really good example that I've been working on with a company called Lazarus Cancer Foundation. Medidata and Lazarus have been working for a number of years together to really help them service and reach patients that are looking to participate in clinical research, but they might not have the right social structure, the social support surrounding them to help them through this process. So we've really worked with Lazarus to help find ways to speak with patient communities, to query their patient communities, to figure out exactly what they need to stay engaged in a clinical trial. Do they have the right financial resources? Do they have the right social support? Are they close to the clinical research site that they might want to participate in? So we're taking the data about the patient that might be a great fit for a clinical trial and then going one step further to figure out what's the social if you want to say social determinants of health, what are these key attributes that these people might need to have in order to stay engaged in this trial? And what can we do as Medidata and Lazarus? What can we do to support them? Are we giving them the right tools? Are we giving them the option to participate in a clinical trial in a remote fashion? Are we utilizing wearables and technology to pick up more information about how their clinical trial experience is really going? So there's a lot of different ways that we can start adding that empathetic layer to our technical stack, if you will. And I think that's going to be critical for us as we continue to grow as an industry. So
yeah, absolutely. And I know as we're almost near our time now, I just wanted to ask one more question in terms of how can stakeholders also encourage greater participation from traditionally underrepresented communities in these studies and expanding these technologies? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, when sponsors and sites and CROs and basically everybody in this the ecosystem of clinical trials, we have to really make sure that we're reaching out, building the relationships with everybody, but also understanding how the technology that we're introducing into our clinical trials, how they really impact the person. So we have to get smarter about making sure that we're not putting an unintended burden on a person when it comes to the use of technology. So there's this concept of technical literacy that we have to really be tuned into. And I think I saw a question fly by in the rapid fire chat here. Does technology, in and of itself begin to create burdens or access problems for clinical trial participation? And I would have to say, absolutely, it does. So if we're rolling out a solution, it's incumbent upon us as stewards in this industry to make sure that we're not putting more barriers or more issues into the workflow for the patient. So it's critical. It's critical, and it takes a lot of work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Alicia, for joining us today.